Hello, folks. Welcome to the session number 11. Today, we're gonna finish the Unit 5 unsuccessful activities and the Unit 6 assessing speaking. Okay. In this session, our objectives is to identify why some activities in the classroom are not successful. Okay, and remember to participate to give your opinion about it. Okay, here in this video, I don't know if you got a chance to watch it, but here you can find some conversation activities. For example, in number one, we have the running dictation, that this is the ultimate speaking game for adults to get some energy flowing into your class. Okay, even the quietest, most low-level classes will enjoy this one, and it'll get them talking. Remember that dictations, it's something that the students are surprised because not all can write in English, especially when the teacher is dictating, okay? So here you will also find another activity such as just a minute, small talk ESL game, role plays, in conversation classes for adults, and the last one that you will see in this video is the service for ESL students. Okay, let's see here. Okay, let's see here some unsuccessful activities. But before of this, let me tell you that there is not unsuccessful activities. They are going to be unsuccessful when the teacher is making the activity, but a student can't speak at that moment. Okay. Let's see the situation that we have here. The teacher put the upper intermediate students in small groups of four. She gave each group a handful of cards with questions on the card. She told them to take turns reading the cards aloud and then discussing their answers to the questions. The questions included on the cards, we have what's your favorite color and why? Which of these is better for a car, purple or green? Why? What is your mother's sister called? What is your favorite season and why? And then, what was the surprise of the teacher that the room was not about with English? In fact, the classroom was rather quiet. Students took turns reading cards aloud and then sharing their simple answers. Much to the teacher's surprise, there was very little discussion because there were nothing to discuss. Probably here the level of English of the students were very low. That's why that they only answered the question. For example, on the first question, what's your favorite color? Probably the student answered, my favorite color is blue. Why? Because I like it. But that is not a discussion, okay? And when you have a range of vocabulary, you can expand your speaking, right? Let's see another situation that we have here. Okay, let's see this. It says that the teacher of an advanced ESL class in academic program in the United States put together a lesson on American football and the Super Bowl. He found a list of rules on the internet. He collected some sports magazines and some newspaper clippings about the two teams that were competing in the Super Bowl. He brought in a football and two football helmets. The teacher asked students what they knew about American football and wrote some of their comments on the board. He then put his 20 students into four groups of five students each. On the board, he wrote this task. American football is more difficult to play than soccer. He asked them to discuss this for the next 15 minutes. Let's see what happened then. Two or three of the male students starting their groups by saying American football is not football. You can't use your feet, so the name is wrong. Soccer is better sport. After these initial comments, the discussion changed topic to soccer or to sport or to what they were doing after class. The students who were talking were off topic. Some students started speaking in their native languages. That's the problem, as I told you before, that when you don't have when you don't know many vocabulary to expand your speech, your communication skills, your terms into use in your native language. In this case, that's why that most of the students and even the teachers speak more Spanish than English in the classrooms. Okay. Do you have any questions so far? Okay, let's see these ESL conversation activities for adults. Here, you may find the activities, the conversation activities that I was mentioning at the beginning, that you can find in the first video that we have there. And I was mentioning the running dictation. It says here, the only prerequisite for running dictation is that your students are able to read reasonably well. This is definitely the case for all university students in Korea. This one is ideal for monolingual classes because speaking the shared first language doesn't really give anyone an advantage. Let's see the second activity that we have in here, and it is just a minute. If you ask your students what they want to improve in your class, they often say speaking in English. When you dig a bit deeper, they often mean speaking fluency. That is being able to talk quickly without a lot of pauses. This is one of the best activities to help them to do that. This is a fun speaking game that encourages your students to just talk and not worry so much about using perfect grammar. So I would say that because I have practiced this activity with my students, and I call it free speaking. When I say to the student, okay, tomorrow, or do we have some minutes to talk about this topic? Probably the student have chosen that topic. You will talk about it, and don't worry for grammar. Okay, free speaking. When I say free speaking, means that a student don't worry for grammar. They are going to speak in the way that they can. The most important is to communicate, to understand, and to be understood. Okay, let's see the third activity that we have. Okay, the third one that we have here is the small talk ESL game. This is an extremely important but often neglected skill in English conversation classes. Practice it in a real fun way with this challenging game. This conversation activity is one of the best ESL conversation activity for adults. What is the key in this activity? Is to tell your students not to worry about mistakes, but to focus on speaking fluently. Okay. And another activity that we have here, as I mentioned before at the beginning of this session, is the role plays, okay? The role plays in conversation classes for adults. These are often a staple in ESL or EFL classrooms, especially for beginners and for good reason. They serve as kind of a bridge between learning very basic grammar and vocabulary and then free talking. Role plays often work best with high beginner students who are capable of basic conversation if given a bit of thinking time for beforehand, okay? That's another important activity that you can implement in your classrooms, okay? Let's see the last one in this document, and you will find in the first video, okay? We have the survey. The survey is for ESL students. If I were going to a deserted island with my students and could only bring one ESL activity with me, this would be it. I love surveys and use them all the time in my classes. They are interesting and fun for the students, can be used for almost any topic, grammar point, or vocabulary set, and the questions are easy to make in just a few minutes. But perhaps the best thing about ESL surveys, they cover a huge range of skills in a single activity: speaking, listening, reading, writing, grammar, and vocabulary. And they also encourage students to ask follow-up questions, okay? Here you can design some questions that depends on the level of the English of the student that the student have. You can design some questions. You can use question words to gather more information, and while the student are answering the question that you asked first, you will see how much English your students have, okay? Some questions so far? Do you have any questions so far? Okay, here it's something that I was explaining to you in the previous session. Some example of find someone who activity. So I was explaining that you can divide the group, the students in small groups and spread them out on the university, and they have to interview the people who are in the university by asking, or the teacher says, find someone who has a pet. You need to look around the university and look for a person who has a pet, and so on. Okay, this is an interesting activity. Let's see some others activities that we have here. Okay, in this document, you will find the explanation for each activity that I was mentioning before and in the previous session, okay? Let's see now another activity. Find the differences. Let's see here. On the description, two students each have a version of a picture of drawing, but the two versions have some differences, okay? Without showing their papers to each other, they have to talk about their pictures to identify all the differences. What do you need? Two similar yet different versions of a picture, one labeled as A and the other as B. And you here you can find the procedure, okay, the steps that you will need to carry out this activity. Let's see the assessment speaking. Now I have a question for you. How would you assess speaking in the classroom? How would you do it? Okay, let's see something here. Here you will find three stages of speaking assessment, okay? Let's see. The first one is the pre-instruction, okay? In the pre-instruction stage, you are trying to determine how much your students already know. All teachers of all language courses need to do this stage. Good teaching is moving the learner from point X, which represents the student's initial point of knowledge, to point Z, which represents your learning objectives. Pre-instruction assessment, a sort of diagnostic test, can help you assess the initial knowledge based on your students. This is recommended when you have new groups that you don't know how much English they can speak, so you can start from this from the pre-instruction. One of these activity that you could do here, it's the diagnosis, okay? Un diagnosis to identify, to see how much English they know. The other stage that we have is during instruction, okay? So now when you identify how much English your students know, you can identify here how fluent they speak, okay, during the instructions. Let's see, most of the time, teachers' correction of an error during activity will only stifle students. In this, there is something that I would recommend to you, that when the students are talking, are speaking, or are explaining something, don't correct him or her at that moment, okay? Immediately, don't correct them. You take note first, listen to him or listen to her, and then when that student has already finished, you can make the correction as a feedback, but in a polite way, okay? Let's see the other one, and the last one is the post instruction. Let's see, what does he say here? What should you do for the average learners? If you should not correct on the spot, then what should you do? The answer is to wait until the activity is complete to provide feedback to the group. The best teaching strategy is to keep track, either mentally or on a piece of paper, of various errors or difficulties during activity. After you have discussed the topic or completed activity, you might go to the board and address three issues that you noted during the class. You should never mention anyone's names or even glance